Hi, welcome to AI for Good. My name is Juan, and I am part of the International Telecommunication Union, or the ITU, the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies. It's my pleasure to introduce today's AI for Good Let's Talk, which is going to be all about having a fireside chat about what it means to be human, what it means to have human relationships in an age when technology has always been seen to be disruptive. We've had a lot of conversations about how the internet and how social media has kind of really driven the narrative of what our discussions are. And sometimes that hasn't been really great, right? In terms of like the emotions we get out of it. And same thing when it comes to talking about artificial intelligence. We always talk about artificial intelligence from the context of like killer robots, like how it's algorithmic bias, and very different things that we do to that it could potentially do to harm our behavior and our society. But that may not always be the case. So today's episode is really going to be talking about how we can redefine and rebuild human relationships using AI and other emerging technologies. So just to let you know that AI for Good Let's Talk is our series of fireside chats dedicated to discussing the intersection of AI, the human experience, and our quest to build a better world and achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Another reminder is that this conversation is live, so everything that you're seeing is pretty much as is. No, there's no script here. Just a little script, but not that much, right? And I just want to let you know that any conversation thoughts that you may have, suggestions, feedback, Q&A that you want to bring up to our upcoming guest, we'll be monitoring it thanks to the wonderful help of my Padawan, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi. Hello.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah. So just want again, Melissa will be monitoring all our social media on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook for any of your questions, thoughts, feedback, suggestions, and we'll try to incorporate it as part of our conversation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Her name is Dana Griffin, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Eldera, a platform that connects students and kids with vetted mentors for storytelling, educational purposes, and a lot more. And she's going to talk a lot more beyond that as well. So, Dana, how are you doing?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me, and hello from New York.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. From
Hello.
Geneva.
Yeah. So I know before we started this conversation, you and Melissa were really having a great time talking about a lot of different things. So Melissa, why don't you take the lead in terms of just starting the conversation and kind of asking a lot of the questions that you really had already. So
Thank you. Thanks, Juan. So I guess my first question is really just I want to just talk a little bit about yourself and like how your experiences led to Eldera.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I love talking about how Eldera came to life. So I was born in Transylvania, and I was raised there mainly by my grandparents. And I moved to the States for university almost 20 years ago now. And I just continued to search out elders to mentor me, to make decisions, any type of decisions, ranging from what internships to take, jobs to take, where to move, and so on and so forth. And frankly, I thought that's how everybody navigated life, because that's the only thing I knew, until somebody very, very close to me, who was like my mother figure. And she's really the impetus to all of the work behind Eldera. She passed away a few years ago. And that's when I realized, wow, I really had been given such a gift to have access to the most incredible mentors and the kindest people in the world, and that our relationship was symbiotic. I was gaining so much from their wisdom and advice and from their care. And they had a lot of fun with me and seeing their legacy live through the crazy decisions I was making based on their advice. So Eldera is really something that I think has been really brewing deeply for years. And in fact, I've been working on the idea of understanding how that wisdom, unique wisdom that every person has, how is it additive to society, and how can we utilize it to make their lives better and society better. So I was in this super theoretical realm, trying to codify wisdom with the help of AI, and we can go very deep into that. But until the pandemic hit, and it was March 20th, 4 days after schools closed in New York this year, where my co-founders and I got together and we decided, the theoretical realm is really great and interesting, and yes, we will pursue that later, but right now there's a need to connect kids that are stuck at home and being homeschooled by their parents who also have to work, and it's completely overwhelming a new situation, with mentors, elder mentors who are also isolated in their homes to stay safe. So our first Eldera call happened March 30th.
Wow, so
And
not long after.
not exactly. No, we moved fast. In fact, we had so much fun just recruiting our first crews. Our co-founders and I, we reached out to everyone we knew, and that's what kind of got us started on understanding the matching algorithm, the relationship algorithm that we're using for this. And today we're in 17 countries.
Wow.
Yeah, we have kids from all over the world talking to mentors that are on the United States right now, and we built the platform and the safety and the training and the rules to facilitate these relationships. So that's how we got started.
Wow. Yeah, those really, very, very, very cool. And I kind of wanted to, I mean, it's not long since you started it, but I mean, for me, this is not something that's happening often at the moment, or I haven't really seen it before. So I just want to know, like, what have you learned from it? What I mean, were there, basically just what have you learned from it?
I think the number one learning is that human connection is the most powerful thing in the world. And when we talk about human connection, we really talk about one-to-one connection. Think of Eldera as the opposite of Facebook, as the opposite of social media the way you know it. Because what we do is we facilitate, we find the best match between a mentor who has at least 6 decades of wisdom. And by the way, we vet the mentors and we train them and we prepare them to talk to a kid who needs that type of guidance. And so besides that, so we put those two together, and we didn't know what to expect. And now we have this thing that we call the 20-minute rule, because in the first conversation they have, after the first 20 minutes, after the kids try to figure out, like, is this for school? Am I getting graded? What's happening here, right? After 20 minutes, they open up and something clicks. And the reason why it clicks is because the mentor generation still knows how to build human relationships. They can look in a kid's eye that is halfway around the world, and they can spend the first 20 minutes asking questions and probing to find that one thing they have in common. So you look at two people born 60, 70, sometimes 80 years apart, and they are using technology to find what they have in common, whether it's a love for Harry Potter, or a love for a cat or a hamster, or baking. So that's how that's the biggest learning we have. Connection drives everything. So our job is to make connection as natural as possible, because it's incredibly beneficial to both sides.
Yeah.
Now, what we didn't expect at all is that the community in itself now aggregated and started self-organizing. So we have mentors all over the US organizing into subgroups of how to better mentor these types of kids, or how to help us build a better company. We actually have mentors that are offering their time and wisdom to guide my co-founders and I.
Wow, amazing.
Just because of that human connection. That is really the impetus to everything.
That's incredible. And I mean, so do you think part of the deep connecting is because of the generation divide? Because what I've at least found before coming on this call, I was thinking a lot about how we build connections online. And I find that it's very, at least my generation has developed a sort of etiquette online. So there's things that we do and don't say. And for example, one thing that I was thinking about was like if you're in a person or in a room with a person, you can share comfortable silence, but that's something that you can't really do online. If I just stop talking right now, you'd all be like, what is she doing? You know.
That's basically me. I'm enjoying a comfortable silence right now. So, yeah, sorry, please continue.
So I don't know. Is a part of it because both of these generations haven't really. They're generating their own etiquette around it. That's sort of does that play a part? Do you think, or not really?
Absolutely. Initially when we started thinking about how the generations come together, we were thinking about going back to that profile of the villages, because up until 50 years ago, around the world, the way humans developed is that the old took care of the young while the parents' age had to work, right? And we just kind of assumed that's where it's going to go. But the truth is that they're creating a very new type of relationship where the mentors are teaching the kids how to relate to humans. And we didn't really understand how that's going to work until parents started telling us that their kids are picking up soft skills, that they're starting to have conversations around the dinner table where their kids have never had conversations before. So that's very interesting. And going back to your example of the silence, now our mentors have this private community where they share tips and ideas and talk to each other and tell us how to build Eldera better. But in the community, they talk a lot about the value of silence. They are teaching kids that it's okay to be silent. And in fact, it's kind of cool to be able to sit back and think about what you're going to say or what you're going to ask. Or sit back and draw, and the mentors will wait while the kid draws and then show off their drawing or, bring a toy. And it's okay to look at each other through a screen and enjoy each other's silence because that is a moment of reflection. So there's a lot of beautiful things that the two generations are teaching each other. Also, you would be surprised how many mentors in their 70s, 80s know how to use Zoom and hack Zoom even better than we do now because the kids teach them.
Amazing. Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think that's really great because I personally think that for me, one of the things I miss out because I'm a third culture kid. I travel around a lot, and I step in a lot of different like cultures and spaces. But I'm always missing my family, especially now. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. They are missing their family. I had to miss a couple of funerals, not to be sad about it because I was just so far away. And so, from a technology standpoint, I was just very curious. Where do you see technology leading us? Is there an opportunity or a way forward such that it'll allow us to reconnect with kind of these roots that you've been mentioning in terms of relationships?
Listen, fundamentally, the reason why I even started Eldera and I started thinking about how can we tap into the wisdom of our elders to serve a society, because we have over 1 billion people over 60 in the world today. The reason why I even started that is because I fundamentally believe that the way technology has evolved today can allow us to be more human. I believe that it's taking off the table some of the rudimentary and rotary things that we've been doing over the past 50 years. In fact, if you really think about how technology evolved, and it's very interesting, is that our generation, the three of us, our generation is used to technology disrupting the way we communicate, right? So let me give you an example. We type everything. We adapt to how technology wants to use us because technology has been so nascent with us. When you look at how the older generation uses technology, they kind of disavow that disruption, and they use voice and they use video. They are adapting technology to how they communicate, which is the right way of doing it. kids are also doing the same thing, you know. So it's really our generation that has been experiencing this rapid growth of technology in its nascence that's getting disrupted by it. So how does that come back to technology making us more human? The more we look at we can look at at technology in two ways, right? So in one way, it really has disrupted the way we communicate. It disrupted the way we even develop as a species, because up until 50 years ago, we weren't migrating for technology jobs, you know. So the families were generally in the same geographic area, more or less. It's really, this is a very new thing where we disrupted this chain, this intergenerational chain of wisdom transmission with migration. So coming back to Juan's question in a very long way, is that while we disrupted the way we communicate, technology has advanced enough now where it can reconnect us in a very natural and easy way. And I want to be very clear. I'm a huge, huge proponent of how can we use technology for good. But there's nothing as good as being face to face with a person. We're trying to use technology to get as close to that as possible and rebuild those bonds, because those bonds are essential for how we thrive as a species.
So that's a really great point, and I kind of want to throw another question because I think it's a really important one, and especially in the work that AI for Good is trying to do. So we talk about how technology is actually, when we talk about communication technology, it's quite disruptive to our, I guess, our generation. You know, like millennial, I guess, the older,
Elder
where
millennial here, elder
older
millennial on the
millennials,
cusp.
yeah. And one of the things about that is that it's really interesting. One of the things about that really is kind of like this technology didn't really exist in a very concrete way until like maybe later on in the mid 90s and into the early 2000s, where we have, and you know, when Facebook came up and even like MySpace, even before that. Wow, I remember MySpace. You know, MySpace, my friend. But yeah, going back to the question, right? So technology is disrupting kind of the older generations, so to speak, and we're not necessarily seeing that in the younger generations with the next generation. The question I have there is, where does AI fit into that, right? Because AI is intended to be disruptive, or at least that's the projection of how it will at least have an impact in society. Do you think it will have there will be issues around that we should be mindful of?
Yes. Okay. Short answer, yes. Long answer, let's get into it. First, and I know I'm a nerd about this, but you know, when we talk about AI, it's such a general term. When you actually work with algorithms, I don't believe we have AI right now. We don't have artificial intelligence. We have IA, we have intelligent algorithms. And we can utilize and deploy intelligent algorithms to make our lives easier and better. Now, that depends on who's deploying it, right? And who is using the AI, because you can look at incredibly benevolent AI that helps us fight coronavirus, helps us diagnose illnesses early, can help us with many things. And then we can look at AI that's incredibly scary, like facial recognition and surveillance, that's not necessarily benevolent. So I think we need to start with a few things. We need to start putting some sort of guardrails around how we develop AI globally and what it's being used for. And there have been certain advances earlier this year, in particular, coming out of the Vatican, and more with how do we put some of those guardrails and how do we make decisions. But I believe it's incredibly important because AI as a technology, with all of its different components, right? So like machine learning, natural language processing, whatever you want to look at, facial recognition, has the opportunity to either do incredibly good or has the opportunity to disrupt humanity even further. It's just like when we look at nuclear power. We can use it to create clean energy, or we can use it to destroy people. So we have to be incredibly careful with how we use it. I think that the more we're able to build AI solutions that are beneficial to humanity and teach the next generation to think about how to apply AI to problems, the better off we are and the safer off we're going to be. Because really, it all starts with finding one point, finding something that that is problematic, that is causing issues, that is disrupting in everyday life, and then thinking about how you could apply a solution to that. And when I talk to people about AI and AI for good, I really I'm very serious about the point that every single person out there, you do not have to be an engineer, you do not have to be a Turing Prize winner. Every single person out there has the opportunity to think about how intelligent algorithms can make our lives better. And this is going back to Juan, what we were talking about initially, that they're problem owners and problem solvers. And a lot of times when we think about AI, we only think about the problem solvers. We only think about the people who build the algorithms. But really, we have to think so much wider than that.
Right, right. So I guess one question I would have there, just as a follow up on that, is if we're looking at problem ownership, right? And you're absolutely right. And I think, well, I'm not going to say I'm absolutely right, because that's also kind of our branding. But so
which
it's not a
I
plug.
fully agree with.
Yeah, we agree on it.
Support and agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so from problem, it's absolutely right. We all own technology in different facets of it, right? Like, and we all have to have a say in terms of how it's defined. I guess my question would be, for someone who is looking into this and looking into conversational and relationship facilitating AI, where do you ideally see it playing a role in people's lives and kind of in cultivating relationships with people?
That's a very complex question, and it's a great one, right? So let me start by telling you how we are thinking about it at Eldera, and then perhaps we can extrapolate from there. What we've seen over the past perhaps decade, but in particular during COVID, is that we got very isolated. Obviously, we had to, for safety reasons. But culturally, even more than that, getting into these echo chambers where we really only talk to the people that we know and agree with us. And that's particularly true online, right? So if we look at the problems that Facebook has been creating with democracy and with COVID conspiracies globally, the problem with that is that people only talk to their echo chamber. I believe the way we are using AI is we connect to people that have things in common so they can find a relationship, but they are diametrically different. And the beauty that comes out of their relationship is discovering those differences in each other. It's actually not talking to someone that's like them. So to give you an example how well that works, is that 92% of the people that we matched on Eldera, of the mentors and mentees that we matched, are still in conversation 6, 7, 8 months later, which is absolutely incredible to us. And that's because they rejoice in their differences and they like telling each other about their differences. And I think this is where is the next evolution of how we can use AI to connect humans.
Yeah.
There's nothing more important than learning something new. Learning something new makes you happier, makes you healthier, makes you live longer, builds resilience in kids. And we can use AI in beautiful ways to facilitate that. And when we think about what we call relationship AI, the AI that we're building, we're applying it now to connect generations because we think this is the most important thing to solve a fractured society. But there's so many other fractures in society that we can connect using our technology, and we're so excited and honored to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And
No.
well, sorry, I just basically wanted to ask, so then about the matching part of your algorithm. How does that sort of stop from creating an app? How have you built it so that it doesn't create that echo chamber? Or is it mostly the platform that doesn't create the echo chamber?
Both. So thank you for asking that. First of all, the first and most important match at Eldera is between the mentor and the mentee. That is where the magic happens. And it's a one-to-one match. You only talk to a person at a time,
Yeah.
and so to give you tactical, the way the process works is, the mentor tells us about themselves and we ask very specific questions. And then the parent, only the parent is allowed, obviously, to sign up. The kid cannot sign up. The parent tells us about themselves and the child. And we look at so many different variables that are self-expressed but also behavioral, right? So what time of day does the person fill out the form? How much they write? How little they write? How do they write it? Lowercase. So when you start looking at algorithms, just the variants are unlimited. So
Yeah.
when we match two people, and this is the relationship AI that we're building, we are looking at differences and compatibility. And it's a very different way than anyone else looks at matching people. Because the more we learn from existing relationships, the more we know that differences make those relationships stronger. Opposites attract, in a way, if you want, right? You have to have like one point of
Very
connection, that's
Yeah.
like the spark.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Well,
oh, sorry.
I have actually a question. Sorry, I don't mean to cut in because I was very curious about this point, and I kind of want to throw in a bit of a controversial question, just because it's curious about it. And relationships are, very important, right? And one of the worries I have with trust and with technology, especially with AI, for example, is getting the algorithm wrong. And not just like in terms of bias, but also just getting the actual fundamental algorithm wrong, right? And is that a concern that you've had, or have you seen that happen with the type of work you're doing with Eldera when it comes to matching, or could you foresee that happening somewhere else as well, right? So,
Do I worry about algorithms being wrong? Absolutely, 100% of the time. Yes, we are so at the beginning of what we're doing, not just at Eldera, but in general. We have no idea how the algorithms can evolve. There's so many ways you have to think about it, and so many things that you have to build in. That brings me to a thought that I feel very strongly about, right? When we talk about AI and building algorithms, we talk about bias a lot. And how do we build unbiased algorithms? And the truth is, I don't believe that we can build unbiased algorithms. I believe just having that goal is futile. Because what might be unbiased for me is biased for you. So I think that when we're looking at building algorithms at Eldera, and I think about it in general, I think, frankly, we have to find like the lowest common denominator of bias, almost like a culturally acceptable bias that we can apply to AI, and that denominator changes every single day as it keeps learning, as the culture changes, as we apply it to more people. So that's why I'm excited about the way we approach it, because in the process of building Eldera, we rely on the wisdom of our elders. We learn from the wisdom of our elders. We use it as input, as live input in how do we build better relationships. Because guess what? Globally, people over 60 know how to build relationships much better than our generation, and certainly so much better than kids, because they are the least affected by technology. So what we're doing is we're trying to learn from them, from their smiles, from their hearts, from their letters, from their feedback, how to bring those relationships, those natural relationships, not the fake ones that we see in social media right now. How do we bring those natural relationships to life? And I think that, the learnings that we have is that connecting to people that would have never had a chance to meet any other way, two generations, two continents, is the key for us to relearn
yeah.
how those like unconditional relationships are built.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I got a question actually. So I turned out to be monitoring for a little bit.
All good.
And so this question actually came from a viewer, and his question was basically that no platform is really 100% safe, and that's kind of the challenge with with social media, right? With Twitter, with Facebook, like none of it is really safe. I think we can put safeguards, but but it's very difficult to be able to safeguard all of the internet, right? And
Yes.
everyone's opinions. Otherwise, that kind of crosses a line. So I guess the question would be, if no platform is 100% safe, how can you use AI to spot and prevent abuse when connecting with people, especially with vulnerable people, right? So,
Okay, honestly, that's the one thing that keeps us up at night. So when we build Eldera, we're building a microcosm, right? And we're using betting. We're applying NLP. There are many different ways that we can use AI today to make sure nothing bad happens on the platform. But we have to look at the platform in multiple ways. We look at the one-to-one relationships and the one-to-one conversations that happen daily around the world with Eldera. And it is our job to make sure nothing bad happens. And we take that job very seriously. So we start by vetting everyone that joins the platform. And then we apply, um, we apply, we don't just rely on algorithms. We are humans. We need to rely on humans. So I personally onboard every mentor that joins us. I get to meet them. So we use technology, then we use humans to vet them, and then we rely on technology again to find the best match, and then we rely on humans to actually make the magic happen, as we say,
Yeah.
to connect with each other.
Yeah.
Safety is our utmost concern, and the more technology evolves, the more ways there are to mess with it, which means that the more creative we have to be to stay a step ahead. I don't have the answer on how to keep technology safe. My only concern is how to keep Eldera safe, and that's a big concern, because we're talking about two generations that could both be perceived as vulnerable globally. So it's a big job, but I don't have a good answer for that. And if the audience does, please reach out to us, because we keep trying to learn more and more about that. Other than vetting and NLP, those are the two ways we're really looking at right now, using AI to maintain safety.
Yeah. And so, I mean, because you guys have to mitigate a lot, do you see sort of a limit to how large Eldera can grow, because because there has to be a lot of human intervention? Because I think we talk about like how AI has potential to scale to do good, but is there only like a limit to how much it can scale, because you'd still need people involved, or like a lot of people involved, sort of thing.
You know what? Here's my philosophy on building AI. You have to build AI based on a lot of human involvement. You do, because and I'm talking any type of intelligent algorithm. That's the value in it. That's why it's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, trying to find shortcuts to building really good algorithms is, I think it's a waste of time. So to answer your question, yeah, we will use humans to make sure everything is good for humans, but then the more we do this and the more we scale, the more the algorithm can learn from us and support us in doing this job. Like, this is what we fundamentally need to realize, is that algorithms are not here to replace us. Eldera, even when we're going to be servicing millions and hundreds of millions of people around the world, when we're going to have members around the world, it's still, the algorithm is still supposed to learn from humans today. Because, as I mentioned earlier, as we evolve and we change, our biases evolve and we change. And if we don't incorporate that and keep the algorithm fresh every day, then we've lost. So I think maybe my view is very controversial, but the AI is never going to take over managing these human relationships and keeping us safe. It is our job to do that.
for sure.
Right. And I guess I would have a question on that part. I think one of the things that I worry about with like when we talk about communications and especially the role technology plays in communications is that people, it's easy to connect with people we love and the people we want to connect with. And we've seen that, like, I think that's partially why we do have something called an echo chamber with social media, is that when algorithms reinforce the things we care about and we like, it just reinforces kind of a lot of our biases as well. And then my question would be like, where does like relationship building AI or conversational AI play a role in reconnecting us with people that we don't really want to or are readily able to relate to just yet? And how do we facilitate that bridge essentially?
That's a great question. I believe that we facilitate that one by one. Trying to talk to groups it's just not going to work. Groups got us in this problem. Social media and the herd mentality got us in this problem. I think what's beautiful about technology today is that we can personalize every single relationship, every single connection. We can talk around the world with people who are not like us. And let me be very specific about why this is important. There's a Harvard study on child development that shows that when kids build a relationship with a non-parental adult, a trusted relationship with a non-parental adult, it leads to them building resilience in life. And what better thing to build in your kid than resilience?
Right.
And then when elders, build relationships with someone who they don't know, someone from across the world from them, it helps them decrease cognitive decline. This is a study by Johns Hopkins University. There's a study where they sent volunteers in schools to teach kids they've never met, and fMRIs show that it decreased cognitive decline. So, as humans, we absolutely need this. This is not a nice to have. We need to connect with people that are not like us. It is the way we evolve and we grow as a society, because otherwise we're going to regress into this like mob situations that we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that fundamentally you start with one person. When we started Eldera, we matched one elder with one kid on March 30th, and their relationship still goes. And it's
Right.
not about building group relationships. And this is very important. We're so careful about this. We never want people to feel like they need to look good for somebody. When you build this one-to-one relationship with someone you don't know, who's not related to you, who doesn't have background on you, you have permission to be vulnerable. You have permission to explore who you are and who they are, and learn from them and teach them something. And I believe that's the secret to why our relationships just keep going and growing,
Sure.
you know?
That's really
Yeah,
cool.
I think my question, sorry, Melissa, I don't mean to cut, but
That's okay. I'm glad you're very interested in that. Like
yeah,
having a
but
good.
I think my real question there would be, where does AI play a role in that? Because I think that's the thing that I think um, I'd love to get some more clarity on as someone who's interested in it as well, right? Like we talk about relationships a lot, but really we're also talking about relationships with not only with each other, but also with technology. And so where does AI play a role in scaling that sort of philosophy um, into our daily lives, especially in an era, you're absolutely right, in an era where we're all very combative with each other. We are seeing a lot of divides and a lot of like extremism in terms of thought, right? So
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You know what? AI was used to create some of these problems. And not AI, like the algorithms, you know what I'm talking about. Facebook has some of the most sophisticated algorithms in the world. They're using algorithms and neuroscience to create some of the behaviors that we see today, right? The same algorithms can be used to undo them, right? If we can create just one moment of curiosity to meet someone who's not like you, then the AI that caused the problem can also be used to cause the solution. can be used to find someone that will open you up to such a new perspective that hopefully changes both of your lives. And there's many different ways. Like if you're talking, let's talk particularly how do you use it, right? So there's the relationship AI that we're building. That's a one-to-one relationship AI. That's never going to be a group one. And that is looking for these indicators. What is the best person you can talk to open your mind, give you a new perspective on the world, have fun, and contribute. Contributing is one of the deepest human needs. And we can use technology to identify who is that person and what is the best way to connect with them, right? And then we can use AI or NLP to keep them safe in the conversation, to make sure that, some of our values at the Eldera are generosity and gratitude, connection, joy, learning, and legacy, right? So if you deviate from those, from having fun, from being generous, from being grateful that the other person opens up to you, then we can use technology to make sure that nobody gets hurt in that conversation. And because we're able to isolate the conversation so beautifully, it means that every single match is an opportunity to change two lives. And we get to really look at it one by one. We don't have to worry about the herd mentality that we're seeing right now in social media.
And I was gonna ask something. So earlier, when you just started introducing yourself, you'd mentioned that a dream of yours was to codify wisdom. So has Eldera helped you sort of figure out how you might go about doing that? Because I don't even know how you would start. So
yes. So the answer is yes. When I was obsessed with this idea and we were working with our team of how to use AI to codify wisdom, and we think about it just like we sequence the human genome, we can codify human wisdom, because I fundamentally believe that wisdom is as unique to every individual as your DNA. I define wisdom as the triangulation of knowledge, life experience, and confidence. And to be more specific, you gain knowledge in your life, you filter it through your life experience, and you apply it with your common sense, which makes your wisdom unique from anybody else's wisdom. Okay? So while we were playing around with this idea, one of the biggest issues we had is, well, how do we get people to share their wisdom? And what's very interesting is that if you ask somebody what they're wisest about, they don't know. But if you make them talk to someone and care about that person and share with that person, their wisdom comes up right away. So what we realized is that the most natural and beautiful way for elders to leave a legacy and unveil their wisdom is by asking them to care for a younger person. That is really the purest way. There's no shortcuts around there. So that's why what we realized later on is that Eldera is really the funnel for all that wisdom to pour in and become available for generations to come. And we are right now working with a group of our mentors to define what that will look like. They are as involved with giving their wisdom as they are with helping us shape that wisdom for future generations.
No, that's very cool. That kind of makes me think of because back in the day, when there was no electricity and no one was moving away from the 100 meters that they lived. I guess there was always like this like a council, but like a group of all the elders that lived, and whenever the village or the town or the settlement faced uncertainty, or they didn't know how to solve a problem, they would consult with this. This is, I guess, this is what that kind of reminds me of, is if we ever really didn't know what to do or how to move forward, we could consult with wisdom, or but from everyone, which is really cool.
So I think my question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's exactly it. We actually call it our mentor council.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question there, sorry to cut in, was my question there because we're wrapping up almost time. Is that we're talking about codifying wisdom, and a lot of people are sort of already doing that in the space, right? I think I think the Smithsonian already has done a bit of that work with research where they've actually codified like a mentor essentially who is able to answer questions for students. And is that where you'd like to see Eldera go? And is that where you ideally see AI going, where they're able to retain legacy of a lot of our values and the teachings that we have, or is there something different or beyond that you imagine?
You know, I think what the Smithsonian's doing is incredibly valuable. But what I believe is that there is even more wisdom hidden in the people you don't have access to. So by making Eldera available globally, I want the wisdom of the retired Fortune 500 CEO as much as I want the wisdom of the grandma who raised 8 grandchildren but never worked outside of the house. They're both essential to how humans evolve. And I think one of the biggest biases that we have as a society today is that we think that only the wisdom of the people who have been, influential is important. And I disagree. People who have been influential have driven maybe 5% of human development. People who really drive us as a species, who got us where we are today, are the everyday people who are solving problems because they have no choice. They don't think about it as innovation. They have no choice. I think their wisdom is just as valuable, if not more, and it's not being captured at all. And that is where I'm committed to making a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that's kind of our time, really, just because we need to. We're running out of time, but it was really great having that conversation, and I appreciate you, at least from my end, like answering a lot of my questions, which was more targeted and focused on like how we deal with AI specifically in these contexts. So Dana, like, thanks so much for joining us. Melissa, did you have any last thoughts or?
Yeah, I just sort of had one question, which was, I guess, what would you have, or how would you see sort of AI for good helping, spread the wisdom or capture the wisdom or helping you? I mean, what would you want us? What if you could say anything to us? What would it be, basically?
Well, here's what I'd like to put out there for the entire AI for Good community. We're all here because we believe that AI can make us better at being human and can help us solve some of our biggest challenges. So if you have wisdom to share with us, whether on the platform or with us as the founders as we build Eldera, please reach out. There is nothing that we value more than feedback and wisdom. This is how we learn and grow. So this is an open invitation to the entire community. If you want to participate in Eldera, we would be so lucky to have you, either as a mentor or if you have your kids. But if you have ideas about how my co-founders and I can build Eldera better, that is invaluable to us. Please reach out. Our website is eldera.ai.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Dana. We're gonna take you offline really quickly while we wrap up.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. Okay, so I know we have some stuff to talk about. We always mention kind of our activities. It's more than just one let's talk. So Melissa, why don't you give us kind of a brief of what's coming up next?
Thank you. Thanks, Juan. So we're really looking forward to our financial inclusions webinar, where we discuss how AI and alternative data sources are being used to give access to financial services to those who haven't had the opportunity through traditional banks and means. As always, we have more events coming your way, so please check those out on our website, aiforgood.itu.int. Many thanks, and back over to you, Juan.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks, Melissa. So I appreciate that a lot. I think, again, AI for Good Let's Talk is not just one thing. It is a part of a product ecosystem associated with the AI for Good Global Summit. Again, the AI for Good Global Summit is our platform, the United Nations leading platform, to have an inclusive, action-oriented, and global dialogue on AI to accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals. AI for Good is co-organized by ITU and XPRIZE in partnership with 37 plus United Nations sister agencies, the ACM, and co-convened with Switzerland. We appreciate your time. We're really excited that you were able to join us, and we hope to see you next week for our next AI for Good Let's Talk. See you later.
See you.